So, starting with you, Rutendo, would you be able to tell us about your own cultural and religious background insofar as you're comfortable?
Good evening, everyone. For those who were here last year, apologies that you're getting to hear from me again. I'm Rutendo Muchinguri. I was born and raised in Zimbabwe. For those of you who've never heard of Zimbabwe, it is you'll be surprised how many people haven't heard of Zimbabwe, but it's a country in the southern part of Africa. I originally come from the Shona people. The headscarf that I'm wearing today is a modern version of the Shona print, which illustrates and demonstrates harmony of the people with the land. So the green represents the land, the earth, and the fruitfulness of the land, and the water is the blue. As far as my faith, I'm Christian. I was raised Christian, and my relationship with faith has been complicated. It's been really a journey. I grew up in a very Christian family. I went to Christian schools, and then when I got to high school, I became very interested in history, and I started to learn a lot about the history of Zimbabwe and the role that Christianity had in colonization in Zimbabwe. And it took me down a pathway for a long time. I didn't practice my faith. I struggled with Christianity because it was used as a very nasty, Christianity was used as a very sort of nasty to pacify, Zimbabweans and, as the tool for colonization. And so I got to the stage where I was quite angry with religion and quite anti-religion, but never sort of stopped questioning, having been raised Christian, never sort of stopped questioning and having that pang, I guess, for faith and still believing in a higher power and God. And so that took me through a journey through the Bible. I decided that I was going to, read the Bible from start to finish and try and figure out how something that I believed could be so good could still be used for evil. And I found that through that journey, I found that in many places in the Bible, in many places in history, people have done in the name of God, terrible things, or have misused religion rather. But that doesn't take away from who God is and God's goodness. And so through that and reading the Bible, I guess I sort of fell in love with God and with spirituality again, and I guess formed a new relationship with God through that, and became Christian again. And I say again, I guess I don't know if I ever wasn't Christian, but I certainly wasn't practicing, and I was angry at religion. And so now I can proudly say that I am a Zimbabwean Christian woman, but it hasn't come without a journey and without a lot of learning.
Thank you, Rutendo, for sharing that. Rabea, are you able to tell us about your cultural and religious background?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Assalamu alaikum and Ramadan Mubarak. I was born in Pakistan. I came to Australia when I was 2 with my parents. So I spent most of my life going back to Pakistan every few years or so, although I haven't been in about 10 years now, because most of my family are now here. I suppose I was raised Muslim, and I suppose for me, I call it being consciously Muslim from about September 11th, because September 11th, I was in year 11 when that happened, and it was the first time in my life that I'd really experienced a kind of hostility and suspicion towards my community. There was really intense Islamophobia at that time. There still is, but in that time, obviously, there was, it was quite raw, and I think for a lot of us in the Muslim community at that time, it really kind of shook us up, and we were, for those of us who were just kind of culturally Muslim or going along with our lives, we really had to, we were being asked so many questions by anyone in our lives, from, you know, people we studied with, worked with, etc., our neighbours. You had to have the answers, and you had to know your religion, and you actually had to kind of back yourself up. And I remember at that time being in year 11 and getting those questions from other students at my school. I really had to question, is this something that I believe in myself? And I think I found ultimately, I did find faith, and I did find some kind of connection to Islam, and I always say that I became consciously Muslim from then. So that is briefly my background.
Thank you so much, Rabea. That's really interesting, and it does lead me into my next question, which I ask every panel that I host. And personally, I love the idea of bringing your whole self to work, whatever that looks like, but just being specific relative to the bar. In terms of your career in the law and at the bar, how do you feel about bringing your whole self to work? And do you think that the bar is a place where that can happen? And if not, how do we encourage that?
Yeah, Rabea. If I could start generally first, I think, to be completely honest, I think modern day Australia, it's very difficult to bring your whole self anywhere, I think, because there is, you know, racism and prejudice does exist, obviously to varying degrees in different contexts, but it is out there. And it's something I've certainly, I've had always difficulty in the legal profession generally trying to bring my whole self, because I found that people have felt uncomfortable with, you know, different people, or not really knowing how to respond or relate to different people. Being at the bar has been interesting, because I think being self-employed just does something to your psyche, maybe. Not having anyone to answer to, kind of being my own boss, I think has allowed me to bring more of myself unapologetically. And, you know, there are also, I think, a lot of people, I mean, I think there are still people in our profession at the bar who do struggle with being around different types of people, and I don't think even they realise it's happening, but you can just tell there is a bit of discomfort. For example, if I want to pray in my chambers, it's not, no one's stopping me from doing it in my chambers, but I can tell that it makes some people uncomfortable, only because they haven't been around it and they don't really know what to make of it. So I'm getting better at bringing my whole self. I can't say that I do, but I think I suppose how we encourage it is the same as anywhere else. I think it's important that different minorities at the bar are visible, and your committee is doing such great work to make sure that happens. But I also think if you, as someone who's not part of a particular minority, can feel like you can provide a bit of support or be an ally in any way, that's really important. I know when I came to the bar, I'm sure he won't mind me name dropping him, but Harun Hassan called me up. I didn't know him at all, and he called me and he said, I got this random call saying, "Welcome to the bar, I'm really happy you're here. Are you Muslim?" I didn't know who he was. I'm like, yes. He's like, okay, good. And he's like, I just want to make sure. Do you feel comfortable? You know, do you pray? And I was like, yes, I do pray. And he's like, well, do you feel comfortable praying in your chambers? Who you're reading with? Do they make you feel? I'm like, yes, everyone makes me feel comfortable. He was like, he's very intense. I love him, but I really appreciated that from him, that he kind of took that role where he was saying, you know, if you ever feel uncomfortable, I want you to feel like you can come to me and you can speak to me about it. So I think we also encourage it by trying to be allies to people from different minorities.
Marie, what about you? How do you bring your whole self to work, and do you think that happens at the bar?
Thanks, Rabea. You pretty much said everything I was going to say. A younger version of Rutendo would have said no to that answer. And perhaps it is coming to the bar, like Rabea said, and getting that independence of sort of working for yourself. But I think part of it is also just maturity that comes with, with age and with experiences. I think now I am unapologetically who I am. I think you asked me the same answer last year, and I said, I am who I am, and I don't think I know how to be different to be me. I try and be authentically who I am in every situation. Of course, the nature of our work is such that there's a level of professionalism that, you have to sort of have a sort of decorum and, persona, so to say, when you're in court. So, but that applies to everybody, right? Outside of that, I try to be who I am. I'm bubbly, I'm energetic, I'm chatty, I'm, Zimbabwean, I'm proudly Zimbabwean. Probably anyone who comes across me knows that I'm, a Zimbabwean Australian woman. I'm proud of that fact. I've got young kids, and probably everyone who comes across me knows that I've got 2 young kids as well. That's all part of who I am, and it just means, not apologizing when you have to stop work at 5 o'clock and be unavailable between 5 and 8 o'clock because you've got to tend to the kids. That's who I am. That's, I can't apologize for that fact, and I won't apologize for that fact. Obviously, when you're really busy and something is urgent, that's different. But I think it also comes with just, being transparent and just being okay with some people are going to like me and some people aren't, and that's okay. But at the end of the day, I'm going to be authentically me, and there is a place for me at the bar. There is a place for me in this world, and the people who don't like it have to step aside because I'm not going anywhere.
Fantastic, thank you both. And certainly I know that Haroon Hassan is one of our many apologies tonight, and he was one of our inaugural co-chairs of the Race, Ethnicity and Cultural Diversity Working Group, and he is definitely someone who has done a lot to progress the diversity conversation at the bar, as you both are as well. I am really heartened by what you've just said, and having very recently spoken to the current readers group about bringing your whole self to the bar, there was a lot of enthusiasm amongst that cohort as well, which I'm really happy to hear. Moving on to more of a discussion about the theme about the power of the law. I think we could all acknowledge that the law is both proactive and reactive. At a high level, are you able to, perhaps in your own words, tell us where you see the role of law in promoting positive social progress around racism in particular, and do you think it leads or does it lag? Rabea?
I think there's a big role there that can be played. I think we've made a lot of progress, but we are lagging at the moment. I was encouraged to see the county court bring out that new practice note about pronouncing names correctly. But I also think it's 2022, and to only just be getting to the realisation that we need to be pronouncing people's names correctly to give them respect does feel like it could have happened a little bit earlier, but very, very happy that it's happening now. I suppose I'm a criminal lawyer, and one area I really see that promotes social progress is the Koori Court. It's a really powerful forum. I've found that it's so much more impactful for the people that go through that system to have people from their communities speaking to them. You really get more to the root of the cause of offending. You get a much more honest, because it's a conversation, you get much more of an honest discussion. It's less legalistic because you get to have that conversation. And I think not only for the people that go through it is it powerful, because the courts have, historically been a place of injustice for the Indigenous community, but often for us non-Indigenous people practicing in the court, it's a great educator for us. To be there, we have to be educated on, we become aware of different nations, different customs, the different elders in the community. You get to know them by names, you get to know their personalities. So it's been I think on both sides, both within that community and outside of that community, it's been a great progressive area for change.
Thanks, Rabea. Can I ask Rutendo now, without going into the many substantive law reform issues around race and racial discrimination and discrimination more broadly, do you have any legal experiences, perhaps in cases that you may have been involved in, which might reveal that the law is either addressing discrimination in an on-the-ground way, or conversely, do you have any stories which might reveal that, as Rabea said, we might not be there enough yet, might be failing?
Thanks, Astrid. I do have a story, actually. Astrid mentioned that prior to coming to the bar, just before I came to the bar, I worked at the Office of Public Prosecutions, and I was an advocate in the advocacy team. And I guess in that role, you do a lot of bail application and a lot of pre-trial stuff. There was a day I had a bail hearing in the magistrate's court. The accused was a South Sudanese man. Of course, I'm prosecuting, so I'm not defending him. I'm on the other side. We sort of go through our opposing the bail application, the mother of the accused was giving evidence in support of his application. So she gives her evidence, and I have to cross-examine her. I'm asking her some questions about the evidence that she's just given. Then ultimately, the bail application was refused. Then the magistrate gets up and leaves, and she starts to come towards me, and she's coming with her daughter, who's interpreting for her. And her daughter just steps up to me and says, "Oh, my mom says thank you." And I stop for a second, and I'm confused, because I think, she must have misheard. She must have thought that bail was granted when it was refused. So I go to explain to the daughter, and I was like, no, please explain to your mom that bail was refused, like he won't be coming home with her. And, she tells her mom, she talks to her mom, and then she goes back to look at me, and she says, yes, she knows that. She understands that he's not coming home, but she feels like she was hurt. And she feels like he got a chance and he got an opportunity. And, I went home and I cried. Clearly, it still makes me so emotional that despite the fact that she didn't get the outcome that she wanted, the fact that she saw someone who looked like her, and she felt like, while I was cross-examining her, I humanized her. For me, the fact that that was an event to her, that shows me that we are failing. The legal justice system is failing, and it's failing because the legal profession and the lawmakers do not reflect the society. And until they reflect the society, we will be failing. It's got to the people who are making the laws and the people who are enforcing and being the defender of the law and defender of human rights need to reflect what society looks like. And at the moment, it doesn't look like that. Yes, we are making steps, but we are lagging way behind. Because if you look at the Victorian community and what it looks like, it's a lot more diverse than 35% women, than 9% people who are speaking languages. Yes, that's good, we're making changes, but at too much of a slow pace. And you only have to look at disproportionate sentencing statistics to know that there's issues. You only have to look at stories of people's experiences in the legal justice system to know that there is a problem. There is. We are lagging behind.
Thank you, Rutendo, for sharing that story. That was very powerful, and I think that you're right. And in terms of, particularly for those of us who do practice in criminal law, we do see that, and the fact that that was such an unusual experience for that woman makes me think that we do have a long way to go. But it does lead me into, I suppose, my next theme, which was about the voices that we do hear in the law. One of the things that I personally tried to promote, and I know that many here in this room also try and promote, is to have diverse voices leading conversations, not just about diversity topics, but about anything in their field of interest or expertise. I am noticing that there is a push to have diverse voices on panels, speaking on boards, on Bar Council, those kinds of things. So I'm really interested from both of you, if I may, in your own practices and also in all of the extracurricular work that you both do. Are you noticing this happen? And if so, the answer from Rutendo might be yes, but you can tell us, does it make a difference and how important is it to promote that?
I think I've definitely noticed a difference, particularly in relation to gender diversity. I think cultural diversity sometimes, but we're not quite there with cultural diversity. Sorry, the question was how do we
promote diverse voices and having people who've got a diverse viewpoint featured in any conversation?
Well, I think if I could just use a personal example, there are situations where diverse voices can add something extra to the conversation, and not just as the diversity ticket, as in we filled a quota and that's it. For example, I was in a terrorism matter, and there was a bit of evidence about what I thought was quite a benign religious act, and it was made out to equate to some kind of extreme behaviour. And what that act was, it was basically there was a prayer being led in congregation. This particular client was in the body of the congregation and was saying words to the leader of the congregation during the prayer, and that was interpreted as radicalising other people, or and when I saw that, I knew what it was. And what that was is, if someone is leading prayer and they forget the words, or they they mispronounce something, you have an obligation, being in the congregation, to correct. And you can't really radicalise because they are literally reciting the Quran. So unless you're saying the Quran itself is going to radicalise people, it can't be an act of radicalisation to be doing that from the body of the court. And when I sort of said that to my seniors and my solicitor, they kind of said, there is no way anyone else in that courtroom would have known that. So I think, it's having a presence, and I'm sorry, I know your question is more about speaking rather than being in the courtroom, but I think it goes to that as well, that there are experiences that we come to the bar with that that can add value, which is otherwise not intentionally ignored, but it's just, it's not realised. And so I think those, don't know if I answered your question, but it's important to have those voices for those reasons.
I think as well as having a diverse lens, we've got to have diverse knowledge and diverse experience, which is exactly what your example highlights. Rutendo, are you able to comment, if you can, whether you're noticing more diverse voices in conversations, not just on diversity, but other things, and how do you feel about that?
Thanks, Astrid. I think we are starting to notice more diverse voices. I think we're going through the woke generation, and people are becoming more open and more receptive to hearing from people with different voices. And I think it's really important as well to have people who speak to their own lived experiences. It's fantastic that we have diverse people speaking to things. It's important that we have allies who speak about racism and cultural diversity. But for example, as a Black African woman, I wouldn't want to be speaking about what it's like to be an Aboriginal woman and the struggles of an Aboriginal woman, because my experiences are completely different. Yes, we might both identify as black women, but we have different experiences, and I think it is important to have people speak to their lived experiences, and as allies, it's important that we don't prioritize our own voice over the voice of the people that we're trying to help. So I think I am noticing more diverse voices all over. It should always be encouraged, but that doesn't mean to say that it should only be those people we're hearing from. Like I said, allies are good. It is good to hear from people. It can be quite exhausting from, you know, I guess as a black woman who, you know, racism and my race is not something I can turn off. Before you notice I'm a woman, you'll notice that I'm black. And so, you know, in my everyday life, whether I'm in a supermarket, whether I'm at work, you know, like I can't turn off my experience as a black woman. And so it can be exhausting that I have to live it, and then I have to be the one to speak out against, you know, racism as well. So it is important to have other people speak as well, in consultation with people whose lived experience it is. I don't know if I've answered the question.
Absolutely. The overall theme tonight is about the power of law, but I really just want to acknowledge the power of these lawyers who are really sharing their story and being so authentic and honest tonight, so thank you. Another of the ways that we collectively try and promote individual experiences and diversity is through mentoring. Passing it on, paying it forward, fostering. And in terms of mentoring women, I think women lawyers have traditionally been very good at talking about mentoring, and in particular talking about women mentoring other women. And I know that both of you have each been mentored and are mentors and role models to others. And I'm interested in why, if you do, think that mentoring is important, and do you see that the conversation has been shifting from mentoring to sponsoring, and is that a positive development? Perhaps Rabea?
Probably like everyone in this room, I've had the benefit of amazing mentors, both men and women, from different backgrounds. And one thing I've noticed, particularly coming to the bar, or I noticed sort of in my last few years as a solicitor as well, the more junior solicitors coming through, I started to get contacted by a lot of particularly young Muslim women who really wanted to connect with me and wanted to shadow me and see what I did, and it was really huge for them to see someone from their community doing the work that they thought was kind of out of reach a little bit. Or, you know, I had one mentee, I say mentee informally, she came and shadowed me for a little bit and we had lots of coffees and chats. But she, you know, she was having trouble. I think she was in year 11 or year 12, and she was saying, my parents don't think law is a good place for me because it's too racist, and there's too much racism out there. And I really, you know, and I felt almost privileged to be in that position to show her what the experience could be like. And obviously she was a woman who wore hijab. I don't have that experience. I don't wear hijab. I'm a Muslim woman, but I'm not, I guess, visibly identifiable as a Muslim, so her experiences may have been different to mine, but I could still kind of take her to court with me, introduce her to people, and I could see the change in her and the change in that perception, and you know, it's so important. And you know, likewise for me, you know, we have her on a magistrate Masood in here. I've never formally been mentored by you, but you know, just having a visible Muslim in the legal profession is really encouraging to me. So I think it's, you know, it's the old saying, you can't be what you can't see, and you know, have people reaching the sort of heights that Her Honour has is so encouraging to all of us. So it's really important. Sponsorship, I'm not too sure about, to be honest. I think mentoring is like a mentoring relationship is so dependent on the personalities you have, and you're going to have people at different levels, and different places, and different mentees will want different things from you, and maybe in some situations that will be more like sponsorship. Other times it will be more hands-on. So I think sponsorship kind of takes out the kind of tailoring approach to mentoring, which I think is ideal, where it's, you know, the mentor really understanding what the mentor needs out of it. So I'm not sure about sponsorship.
Thanks, Rabea. Rutendo, are you able to comment on perhaps your experience of mentoring? And I note that you were on the same table as me, where Judge Tran is, and everyone on that table feels mentored by Judge Tran, who has brought along a group. What do you have to say about that? And have you seen the shift from mentoring to sponsorship?
I guess I can honestly say that I wouldn't be at the bar if it wasn't for a mentor. Jeremy Twigg sort of took me under his wing. I think I just finished law school, and at that stage, I'll be honest, I had never imagined that coming to the bar was a possibility. It just wasn't. It was something that I didn't sort of consciously ever think of, because I'd never seen anyone at the bar, or never heard. I don't think I'd even met a barrister really until I met him, and so it was just something that wasn't sort of, that I thought was possible, was within reach. And even when I did start working for him as a researcher, and he'd take me along to court, and I'd sort of, you know, watch up. I honestly at that stage didn't think that it was something that I could do. And the beauty of mentorship, I guess, is that, you know, sometimes a good mentor can see in you that things that you don't see in yourself. And so he started really encouraging me to, you know, come to the bar. But, you know, at that stage, I obviously wasn't ready. I didn't even have a practicing certificate at that stage, and I didn't feel ready. But he sowed the seed. And with every job that I had after that, it was sort of always in the back of my mind, and sort of the whole path was leading me back to the bar. And so I really do believe in mentorship. And perhaps if I can sort of take it a step further, I think that in the case of Jeremy and I, it was probably a bit more than just mentoring. I think it was sponsorship, if, you know, whatever that sort of means. But I think he did take it a step further, because he gave me a job to be a researcher when he really didn't need any research done. He really didn't need. He'd get me to like read pleadings and tell me what I think about, you know, areas of law that I really didn't know much about. But, you know, he was just exposing me to like learn. And, you know, even with jobs that I got after that, he was, you know, my biggest advocate, sort of being my referee, pushing, hearing about opportunities and saying, you have to apply for this job. I'll put in a good word for you. And I think that is sort of the next step from mentoring. But that said, mentorship can look like lots of different things. And it's important that we acknowledge and we all know that mentorship looks like lots of different things, because perhaps in your life you don't have the time or the capacity to, you know, be the champion of someone in the sponsorship sort of way. But that doesn't mean that you don't have, you know, a role, or you can't have a role to play in the career of someone or in the life of someone else. Mentorship can look like you giving just what you have the capacity to give. That might be, you know, a catch up once in a while. It can just be an informal mentorship where you, you know, call the person when you're in trouble, or you need someone you need to pick someone's brain. Or it can be, you know, in the case of Christy Jones and I, where you steal their practice. It can look like lots of different things, and there's room for sponsorship and there's room for informal mentorship. But I would encourage everyone to, you know, be a mentor in any capacity that they can, and seek mentorship as well. Even mentors need, you know, mentors.
Thank you, Rutendo. We might wrap up, and I might leave the last word to Rabea. Do you have any thoughts or observations that you'd like to share in conclusion about celebrating diversity at the bar?
I think if I could end with actually, Rue and I go back and we're friends from before the bar. When we were working somewhere together, when we saw each other, we were so happy. Like, we literally couldn't stop smiling. And we went home and told our husbands about it. It was such an event. And so, you know, we kind of celebrated in our own ways, and we were happy that, you know, another one got in, so good. But it's great. Like, I say celebrating because it was a bit of a novelty to have another person of colour in the same room as me, because you're so used to that not being the case. And while that's great, and it's good to acknowledge the kind of journeys that people have had to get to where they have gotten to, I would really like to get to a place where we don't have to celebrate it and it's normalised, because you celebrate when it's something unique. And so I would like us to get to the place where we're moving from celebration to just normalisation.
Thanks, Rabea. Rutendo and Rabea for sharing your thoughts and being really vulnerable with us. I would like to end this panel discussion on a positive note by celebrating the both of you, because you are the future leaders of our bar, and we're so lucky to have you. We're so lucky that you participated tonight and on other multiple occasions, so thank you both so much.